Nick, my entire life I've been seeking what's reality. I was trained in brain science and I've explored the theistic hypothesis. I saw an article that you wrote that said maybe the whole universe, everything that we think is reality, is a fake. And I said to myself, well, that's a clever little joke. But is it a joke?
No, the world might be a lot stranger than we think. And if you stand back, it might not be that implausible that the truth, whatever it might be something that would sound very strange to us if we suddenly discovered it. So the mere fact that some hypothesis seems strange or odd or even funny is not necessarily a reason to dismiss it. So then you have to zoom in and actually look at the reasons for this. And the simulation argument, which I came up with, it doesn't actually show or try to show that we are in a simulation. It tries to show that one of three possibilities is true. It doesn't tell us which one, only that at least one of them is true. And so those three possibilities are, one, that almost all human-level civilizations go extinct before becoming technologically mature. Technologically mature means having...
In a very advanced way.
Yeah, having developed all those technologies we can already see are physically possible. We just can't build it yet, but we could see that it's possible in principle. So that's the first possibility. There is a very strong filter so that almost nobody makes it through. The second possibility is that among all technologically mature civilizations, almost none of them is interested in creating what I call ancestor simulations. An ancestor simulation would be a very detailed computer simulation of people like their historical predecessors. A computer simulation so detailed that the simulated people would be conscious. The people simulated in the simulation would actually have experiences like we do.
And when you say simulation, I'm saying fake. I mean, what it looks like is not the real case.
Yeah, if I mean, whether you would want to call it fake or not, we can continue to discuss. But the second possibility is that of all the mature civilizations, they're just not interested in, they have other better things to do, you know, with all their resources. They have powerful computers and all of that, but running simulations of their historical predecessors is just not anything that any of them is doing.
Okay.
The third possibility, which is the one you were referring to, is the simulation hypothesis. The hypothesis that we are literally living in a computer simulation, that the whole world that we see around us is not just in a metaphorical sense, but in an absolutely literal sense, existing only in the computer built by some advanced civilization. So that's what the argument tries to show, that at least one of those three is true.
So let's go over it again. Number one is that civilizations become extinct before they become this super technology society.
And almost all of them, not just most of them. Practically all of them.
Almost 100% because you have to get all. Secondly, that if a couple make it through the first, that for some reason they have no interest in going through.
And again, it has to be practically all of them lose interest completely.
And the third, if you don't accept those two, you're left with the third, and that is we're it. Almost certainly.
And so the full argument uses some probability theory and stuff like that, but the basic idea behind the argument can be easily conveyed, I think. So assume that the first possibility is not true. So assume that of all human-level civilizations in the world, at least some, non-negligible fraction become technologically mature one day. And the argument makes no assumption whether this will happen in 50 years, as some people say, or whether it will take 500,000 years.
Or 500 million years.
500 million years. So then, if we assume that that is false, then there will be eventually some civilizations that are mature. And also assume that the second possibility does not obtain. So at least some of these mature civilizations use some fraction of their computational resources
to have some fun.
To run ancestor simulations. Now, then you can show that because the technological capabilities that such a mature civilization would have would be so extreme, they would be able, even by devoting a tiny fraction of their computers to this end, they could create astronomical numbers of these ancestor simulations. So
you're saying it wouldn't be that hard for them?
No, you can roughly estimate how much computing power it would take to run one, say, simulation of human history. And you can also roughly calculate a lower bound on how much computing power a technologically mature civilization will have. We already have some engineering designs. You could turn planets into computers, and you can see how much, they might have many planets, and they might have other unknown technologies that we haven't even guessed at.
But just with
even just using what we already know is physically possible. You could show that even if they just used, say, a thousandth of their computing power for just 1 second, they could still run astronomical numbers of these simulations of human history. Which means that if you reject the first two possibilities, you have to conclude that there will be many more simulated people like us than non-simulated people like us. In other words, almost all people with our kinds of experiences would be living in these simulations rather than in the original history, because they would create so many of them. Now, if that's the way the world is, that almost all people like you having this kind of visual experience of talking to me and are simulated, then by a principle of indifference that you can argue independently for, you should think you're probably one of the simulated ones.
There's a sort of a philosophic concept that a sufficiently advanced civilization will be able to create a simulation. Yeah, maybe you've answered this before? A simulation.
I've had so many simulation discussions, it's crazy.
Okay. So, because
in fact, it got to the point where basically every conversation was the AI/simulation conversation. And my brother and I finally agreed that we would ban such conversations if we were ever in a hot tub. Okay. That was like, because that really kills the magic.
Hot tub, so the idea is, right, any sufficiently advanced civilization could create a simulation that's like our existence. And so the theory follows that maybe we're in the simulation. Have you thought about this? And
a lot.
Are we?
Even in hot tubs? So much so it had to be banned from a hot tub.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not the sexiest conversation.
Are we in?
I think here's, in my mind, like the strongest argument for us being in a simulation, probably being in a simulation, I think is the following. That 40 years ago, we had Pong, like 2 rectangles and a dot. That was what games were. Now, 40 years later, we have photorealistic 3D simulations with millions of people playing simultaneously, and it's getting better every year. Mm-hmm. And soon we'll have virtual reality, we'll have augmented reality. If you assume any rate of improvement at all, then the games will become indistinguishable from reality, just indistinguishable. Even if that rate of advancement drops by 1,000 from what it is right now, then you just say, okay, well, let's imagine it's 10,000 years in the future, which is nothing in the evolutionary scale. So given that we're clearly on a trajectory to have games that are indistinguishable from reality, and those games could be played on any set-top box or on a PC or whatever, and there would probably be, billions of such, computers or set-top boxes, it would seem to follow that the odds that we're in base reality is 1 in billions.
So
tell me what's wrong with that argument.
Is the answer yes?
The argument is probably. But I just like, is there a flaw in that argument?
I mean, someone.
I'm not sure what the error.
No. The argument makes sense. So the assumption then is that somebody beat us to it, and this is a game.
No. There's a 1 in billions chance that this is base reality.
Oh, okay. What do you think?
Well, I think it's 1 in billions.
Okay.
I mean, that seems to be like clearly what it suggests.
Right.
And actually, I mean, arguably, we should hope that that's true, because otherwise, if civilization stops advancing, then that may be due to some calamitous event that erases civilization. So maybe we should be hopeful that this is a simulation, because otherwise.
Because they could reboot it.
Well, otherwise, either we're going to create simulations that are indistinguishable from reality, or civilization will cease to exist. Those are the two options.
Taken you.
Oh my God.
Where have you landed?
Why would you ask that?
I'm asking you that here and now. It's New York City. It's March 7th.
Well, partly it's taken to these very strange images that are behind your head right now. These are pictures of equations. I've been, for the last 15 years, trying to answer the kinds of questions that my colleagues here have been raising. And what I've come to understand is that there are these incredible pictures that contain all the information of a set of equations that are related to string theory. And it's even more bizarre than that, because when you then try to understand these pictures, you find out that buried in them are computer codes just like the type that you find in a browser when you go surf the web. And so I'm left with the puzzle of trying to figure out whether I live in the matrix or not.
Wait, you're blowing my mind at this moment. So you're saying, are you saying your attempt to understand the fundamental operations of nature leads you to a set of equations that are indistinguishable from the equations that drive search engines and browsers on our computers?
That is correct. So,
wait, I have to just be silent for a minute here. So you're saying as you dig deeper, you find computer code writ in the fabric of the cosmos?
Into the equations that we want to use to describe the cosmos, yes.
Computer code.
Computer code, strings of bits of ones and zeros.
It's not just sort of resembles computer code, you're saying it is computer code.
It's not even just is computer code, it's a special kind of computer code that was invented by a scientist named Claude Shannon in the 1940s. That's what we find very, very deeply inside the equations that occur in string theory, and in general in systems that we say are supersymmetric.
Okay. Time to go home, I think. Where are we going to go? So are you saying we're all just, there's some entity that programmed the universe, and we're just expressions of their code?
Well, I didn't say that. Some of those
like the Matrix? That's what you said.
Some of those codes are showing on the screen behind you right now. They don't look like codes, but these pictures, which we call adinkras, are graphical representations of sets of equations that are based on codes. So this is, in fact, to answer your question more directly, I have in my life come to a very strange place, because I never expected that the movie The Matrix might be an accurate representation of the place in which I live.
Jim, may I give you an argument that we don't live in the Matrix?
Please! Yeah!
Very simple
give me one now, quick!
A very simple argument. There's a property that the real world right down here has that no mathematical equation has, that no solution of an equation has, that no abstract object has. Here in the real world, it is always some moment, which is one of a series of passing moments. And a mathematical equation doesn't have a flow of time in it. It just is.
No,
and this means...
But Lee...
Wait, let him finish. Wait, I need him here and now.
This means that, to me, that the ancient metaphysical fantasy that we quote are just mathematics cannot be true, because in a world that was just mathematics, there would be no moment of time.
Why isn't there math as a function of time?
I'm sorry.
We solve those. These are differential equations.
But,
no, but
then you lay the solution out. X is a... Yeah.
You're mistaking. You keep using the word is, and I'm talking about the word describe. You see,
describe is fine, but
but
then we're
let me finish, please, since we started with my discussion. The point is that it's fun to talk about some deep metaphysical essence that sits behind physics. But for some of us, it's about trying to find the most accurate way to describe where we live. And so my statement is that in the description of our universe, that it's a supersymmetrical universe, which we were going to test in the LHC, if you believe that description, I can show you the presence of these